press that. And it looks like we are good. Welcome everyone to Shin-Arken Podcast episode 18. We're going to be talking about Revenants and Stronghold and stuff like that. So, got myself, Shin, and then Arken. What's up, Arken?
Is it really 18 episodes, dude?
Yeah, this is episode 18.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
pretty awesome. Very cool.
I mean, it feels a lot longer than it probably relatively is because we took that giant break between like
Multiple breaks.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
multiple breaks, but like it was episode 9 and then it was like episode 10 like almost a year later.
I think that's exactly what it was. Yeah, because we didn't have any content to discuss whatsoever until then.
Yeah, we're just like, I don't know what to talk about. So but yeah, now we got stuff. We got all sorts of stuff. You gonna say something?
I think it'll be an interesting discussion, especially since everybody, well, not everybody, everybody has access to the Stronghold testing, but only those who pre-ordered have access to the Revenant. Is that correct?
Yep,
Okay.
that's correct as far as I'm aware.
I mean, you could fight against them if you don't have it, obviously,
Yeah.
but you can't play as them.
Yeah, but luckily I pre-ordered, so I have access to it. And I did a whole bunch of Revenant testing last night.
Did you dedicate a whole thing to it, or is just how did it go?
It was kind of just like I kept playing it in 1v1s and then a couple of matches, both Stronghold and Conquest. It was kind of just like, hey, this is a thing, let's do it.
Right. I mean, you might as well get it out since you have a decent amount of time to cover it, so it makes sense without a doubt.
Yeah.
So I have a
But
question for you.
What's up?
Regarding the Revenant.
What's
Can they
up?
see?
Well, I mean,
Are they blind?
no, like from what I've been told, like from that perspective, yeah, they got the whole blindfold thing. But as far as I'm aware, they they just use it to help themselves focus or something like that. They can still see. They're just covering it up to like heighten their senses or their connection to the mist or something like that.
But this isn't Daredevil. You don't just put it above your eyes and magically you become amazing at everything else, right?
Apparently, I guess that's how it works with Revenants. Suddenly, you can do all of the amazing things. You just put a blindfold over your face.
That's it? Now, do you think it's a see-through blindfold, or do you think it's an actual blindfold?
I bet some of them are cheating. I bet some of
They
them
have to be cheating.
Some of them.
There's no way. There's no way. They see an eviscerate. They're like, there's no way that you cannot be cheating. You have to see that.
Could be like oh, there was some movie once I think where it was like they couldn't see, but like they could still see like I don't know, like movements or like vibrations, something like that, and they kind of like still saw everything. It just wasn't like true sight.
So, Daredevil.
Yeah, maybe it was
Oh.
Daredevil.
You should name a Revenant Daredevil. You might as well at this point because someone's gonna do it.
Daredevinant.
Daredevinant,
The Daredevinants.
or Revenant, or Ritlock can't see shit. All one word.
I can't see shit. New class coming to Guild Wars 2.
That's it.
Oh man, but yeah. Well, since you've had a chance to actually fight them, what are your thoughts of fighting Revenant so far? I'll give some of my input on like playing them and fighting them, but I want to know your perspective first.
Well, I have to say that since I didn't pre-order it, I didn't have the opportunity to play it. But as playing against it, they seemed incredibly weak. Now, I think the biggest reason why they seemed very weak was the simple fact that when I was fighting one, now I was fighting a condition-based Revenant earlier today mostly, running Rabid Amulet, so it was fairly tanky, right? So,
Yeah.
but I think the one thing that really drew it away from me was the fact that there were no random condies being thrown at me. I had to actually dodge stuff. Like there was no like the best examples I would give, like, you have IP from, Incinerate Powder from Engineers,
Yeah.
which is just a random proc, or you have other random procs that just thrown out. I didn't have any of that when I fought against it, so it seemed a lot more fair in that regard. So I think that's the reason why I considered it to be weaker, is because I'm so used to, oh, look, there's a random condition put on me, which I have no idea where it came from, but I didn't have any of this, you know? So,
And
while
that's-
yes, they seem very weak, on the flip side, it still seemed pretty fair.
Yeah, that I'm actually gonna once we've gone through all of your kind of feedback and your impressions. That's actually something I'm going to kind of bounce off of when I get to some of my playtesting experience, because there's something very heavily tied to that aspect of fighting them that it helps contribute to why they are not as powerful as they could be right now.
But now the question is, now when you say could be, should they be? Honestly, because I think where they are right now might be where other classes may want to be. And what I mean by that is in terms of fairness, right? Like I said, I didn't see any instant abilities. I didn't see any ridiculously strong skills that didn't have obvious animations. I actually got hit with one skill that applied, I think, 8 stacks of confusion on me, but it was my own fault. I saw it, didn't dodge it. My own fault, obviously. So, do you think that they should be more powerful, or do you think other classes should look at that and be like, that makes sense. That's fair. There shouldn't just be random conditions put on you. It should be just, oh look, I hit you with something that was quite obvious.
Well, there is one thing I should probably put this out there for our viewers, just so they don't get too crazy. None of the Revenant is not done yet. It's still missing entire portions of the class. Like, it doesn't have a weapon, it doesn't have a legend, it doesn't have an entire trait line. Like, it's not done. There is
Right.
stuff missing, so we do have to take that into consideration while we're talking about all this.
True.
But the thing that I was talking about that makes them feel not as strong, fixing that actually wouldn't really change what you like about it, where there's nothing really random coming out of anywhere. Like, I guess I'll just say it now. Like, one of the problems I noticed while I was playing the Revenant is they have really slow attacks,
Right.
slow attacks, and there isn't really anything random that comes off of it. But it seems like there's so much windup for not an appropriate amount of payoff. So, like, with the amount of windups they have at the current speed that they can wind them up, the payoff and the amount of impact they have isn't really there. And not to mention that leaves them wide open for like interrupt mesmers. Like,
Right.
Revenants are food for interrupt mesmers.
Oh
Like,
yeah, but that's on a different tier of like ridiculousness. You know
yeah,
what I mean?
but even still, like, just getting interrupted by, say, a necromancer or a shield warrior or a hammer warrior, like, they're very easy to interrupt. It's
Right.
part of what I feel is keeping them. They don't feel as strong as they could be right now. It's just because everything they do is so slow that they can't, against anyone with any sort of CC potential, they just can't really get their big hits off if the other player knows what tells to look for.
Right.
And
Now, what you just said right there, and again, I apologize for interrupting, was,
go ahead.
isn't that kind of how it should be, though, in a sense? Right? If I see it, I either dodge it, block it, blind it, invuln it, or stun you, or CC rather, right? I like that, though, in a sense, because, again, it brings more fair play to the game instead of just, some random proc that just happens to go off. Well, I didn't get to play it as much as you. I'm just going off of what I fought.
Yeah.
And you might be right. There may not be enough payoff for the long windups. That may be 100% true. But again, when I compare it to, again, like you said, interrupt mesmers, where that's like on a whole ridiculous tier of ridiculousness, it's a little rough.
Well,
you know?
I mean, to be fair, mesmers are really powerful right now. I mean,
Dude.
they're like the exact opposite of where Revenant is in terms of strength. But
Actually, let me just tell you this. Before the patch, I was looking at it. There were 3 tiers of balance. It was B tier, you had underpowered, you had A tier, which was either pretty balanced or slightly overpowered, and then you had S tier, which was, overpowered.
yeah,
Now you have B, A, S, and what the fuck tier,
yeah.
which is exactly where mesmers are.
Oh, man.
It's I don't want to go off too much, but that's kind of how I labeled it after it. So it's pretty funny.
Well, to be fair, I mean, I did a little bit of like really late night interrupt mesmer practice last night in just my dueling server or whatever. And yeah, it's ridiculous. Well, not just in the dueling server, but also like in actual matches. And yeah, it's ridiculous. Like, you can blow people up with that thing. It's nuts. But no, like, with the whole interrupt, like, I do agree with you that having that counterplay there to having the windups and then a smart player being able to dodge them, like, that's good. I like that. But it feels like it's too stacked in the favor of the player fighting the Revenant. Because the Revenant, it's like, the Revenant can't really do much to get those hits off if they're fighting someone who can interrupt a lot. Like, it doesn't even have to be a Mesmer. It could be a Necro. I fought a Necro a fair number of times on the Revenant, and it's really hard to get stuff off without getting interrupted if you're fighting someone who has a fair amount of CC availability. Like, it almost makes running, in its current state anyway, it almost makes running the dwarf, the Chalice stance with the stability road skill,
Right.
it almost makes that mandatory, because otherwise you're not going to be able to get anything off. Like, if you know you have to get a whole bunch of your big CCs off, or not even just CCs, just your big skills up, or any of your skills in this case, you have to throw down that road and stand in it before you can do anything, and that kind of limits you to staying in or around that road when going after your opponents. And even beyond the cast time of the skills, like say with the hammer or the Axe 5, which is that big rift that kind of opens and then closes.
Right.
Both the hammer 5, which drops that big spectral hammer on something, and that rift, they're almost too obvious. Like you can see them coming a mile away, and then like there are like the hammer. It seems like the radius that it hits is too small for how big the tell is, and then for the rift, it almost seems like the area in which it rips in is it's either too narrow or it's too small or something. It doesn't, like there were a lot of times where I thought it would hit, but it doesn't. I don't know what it is about that rift, but it feels like it's either not hitting the area it should, or it's not clear about what area it should be hitting.
Sounds like a bug, honestly. If the intended area is not being triggered, that's exactly what it sounds like.
I don't think it's a bug. I think it's just poor telegraphing. I think it's just, it doesn't, like the graphic is really weird. It's like, it's all, shifting graphics, in a rift. It's just the way the animation is for that rift makes it kind of hard to tell what the general AoE of it is, because like, you have a lot of things that have decent AoE indicators. Like you can generally tell when an Earthshaker comes down the area that Earthshaker hits. You can generally tell what, say, the power spike, the power block. I'm forgetting the name of the mantra on Mesmer. What the interrupt one.
Yes.
Yeah, you can generally tell what the size of that AoE is, and when you see those graphics, even if you get hit by them or you miss them, you still have that graphic in mind. You still have reference of how big an area that hits. But like that rift, there's nothing on the ground. There's no real clear animation in the air that shows you the exact limits of where that thing pulls people in. I was hitting people with it. It's not bugged. It will still hit people, but it's just very hard to tell where it's going to hit, at least as far as I'm concerned.
Is it lacking a circle? Is that pretty much? It sounds like a quality of life issue. It's lacking that circle.
It's very much a quality of life issue. It's not really a circle. It's more of a line. Like the that kind of fiery line that Revenants can drop down with the mace. It's like that as far as like the area boundaries, but it doesn't have the clear boundary. It just, because it's not a combo field, it just kind of, it's this floating rift in midair that will open and close, and then if you're in the area, which is very hard to tell, you'll get ripped in, and I think you get like a bunch of torment on you or something like that. But it's like, it's kind of easy to tell, okay, if I am anywhere near this thing, I probably get ripped in, but it's very easy to just kind of step away from it and you're fine. Like, it's got such a big tell on it that it's like, oh, there's a big death rift, I should probably not go near that, and then they're out of it, and then whatevs.
Now let me ask you this, because again, I didn't play, and everything you're telling me, and literally the first thing in my mind that came up was, it sounds like my Guardian in a sense, where keeping someone in a circle or in a specific area sounds incredibly difficult, right? That is literally the first thing that came to my mind. Literally, again, it's just a minor thing. I haven't played it, but that's sort of the first thing that came into my head. Do they lack soft CC like we do?
They kind of do. Yeah, I have not noticed any solid form of immobilize. I believe you can. I feel like there's a way to cripple on the Revenant, but it's like one or two skills maybe. It's not very widespread.
I see one chilling skill, but that's easy to avoid. But that doesn't last long. But
there is the chill. There is chill.
That's it.
There's the chill from the Axe 4, and that one I can land that fairly reliably because it's a pretty fast projectile. The other one, I believe there's a trait that gives you chill when you crit, but I forgot what it is. It's either when you crit or there's something that gives you a condition when you crit, but it's on a decently long internal cooldown. I think it's like 10 seconds. So I forget which one it is, but
it's right here.
What is it?
The Google for the win. It's called Frigid Precision. Chance to chill your foe when you land a critical hit. It doesn't say how long. The internal cooldown is actually really short. It's only 10 seconds.
Yeah.
But again, I don't know the duration.
I think it's like, I feel like it was 5 seconds. Maybe.
Wait. A 5-second chill on a 10-second internal cooldown?
I think.
That is broken as all hell.
The thing is, though,
really broken.
The thing is, though, it's landing those crits. That's part of the problem. Is you can have a lot of that stuff, but if you can't land the crits in the first place, it's going to be really hard to get those procs.
I think it's also when you're limited to one weapon set, especially if that weapon set is pure melee, then
Yeah.
you might have an issue.
Yeah, that's another thing is they right now, and I have a feeling, I have a hunch, but I can't say for sure that their power set will kind of help their mobility a bit. But again, we don't even know what it's going to be. We have no confirmation of what it's going to be. There's been data mine stuff. It's like, oh, it could be Shiro and swords and stuff, but that's not confirmed. That's just data mined.
Right.
So it could be that just a lot of the issues come from the fact that it doesn't have its power line, that it doesn't have its weapon set. And I can almost guarantee that's a lot of what the problems with how Revenant feels is right now. But just with the stuff we have, the weapon sets it has, it doesn't really have much for mobility. I mean, granted, the staff is decent. The staff has like a dash forward on the number 5, which is it's on a decent cooldown. I forgot what the cooldown of it is, but you can't do it super often. It dashes you forward, and it's a fun skill. Like it'll punt everyone around you like away, like it pushes everyone away. It's fun to use, but it doesn't move you a whole great distance.
No, it's only 600. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
It's on
not
a decent
enough.
CD too. It's on a 20-second cooldown. It's actually kind of long for
Yeah,
a decent for only a very small distance.
yeah.
I mean, it does have the knockback effect, and yeah,
Yeah, I think the cooldown is warranted because of all of the stuff that's kind of wrapped into that skill. It's got the mobility and the CC. It's a very useful CC because like each like as you're using it, there are several. I think it's like 9 ticks of it or something like that, or 6 or something like that. Several ticks of this skill, so it'll clear blind and then it'll still push people. Like it's handy for getting through even when you're blinded.
right.
So,
Due to those multiple hits, yeah, that's
Yep.
what I'm looking at. That's
Yeah.
fair though. I can see that.
Yeah. Like I guess I should probably talk or mention like all this stuff where I'm talking about, like it feels really slow with a lot of its attacks and stuff like that. That's trying to DPS. That's trying to do condition damage specifically. Like that's what I was mainly testing with that regard. But I tried it in some games and in some just dueling whatever with like bunker, like full on healing tanky. I think I used cleric's amulet for a little bit. That it actually keeps itself alive pretty well. Like it can keep itself up for a good while. Like there was even a point where I was in a Stronghold match and I was fighting a necromancer and a ranger while keeping myself and a guard NPC alive. Like it can do a pretty damn good job of supporting itself and allies.
It looks like it has a lot of fun support.
It does.
Like a lot of fun, like active fun support. Like the tablet, I was looking at it, I'm like, do you just constantly move this thing around and it's got constant heal? I mean, what is that?
Yeah, it's
that looks
actually
really, really neat.
it is fun. Like that's the thing about Revenant that it's got me all conflicted. Like it's fun. It's a really fun to play class. Like even with the low damage, it's just fun to execute things aside from the speed issue of its skills, but it's fun to use. The healing is it's fun to use. Like you can throw the tablet around. It heals when you throw it through people, and everyone you throw it through gets healed. It's got all of these kind of unique ways of healing around the tablet. You can give it regen around it. Like it's got a whole bunch of cool stuff with it. It's fun to use. It's just outside of bunker support, it just doesn't really do enough. It's not effective enough. And I have a feeling that's largely in part due to the fact that it's missing entire pieces of the class.
Right.
Uh,
I also think that it's also contributed to the fact that you have 2 classes, Mesmer and Thief, who are very, very quick to interrupt you and spike you down.
Yeah.
Well, specifically the Mesmer with how they are right now.
yeah.
Do you think that that's pretty much what's contributing to the lack of the ability for Revenants to pull off their moves because of that? It seems like it's literally just one class interrupting the shit out of other classes, especially the Revenant with its slow animations.
Yeah,
Do you think that if that was looked at, that it wouldn't be nearly as ridiculous?
I think probably the biggest thing, and this does stem from the speed of its attacks, but it stems from a few other things, is it lacks pressure. Like Revenant lacks pressure right now. You can't pressure, you can't counter pressure, you can't put that Mesmer on the defensive, you can't put the Thief on the defensive because you just don't. You don't have anything that puts any sort of real danger throws anything dangerous at your opponent. You're basically sitting there kind of poking them or attempting to poke them while they just kind of dance around you and dodge your stuff, and then they blow you up. Like other
Right.
classes, you have that counter pressure. You have a way of putting that interrupt mesmer on the defensive if you need to. If you've got ways of AoEing that thief or ceasing the thief, doing something to pressure the thief on their defensive for at least a little bit so you can recoup a little bit and you have that whole fighter-esque gameplay going. Revenant doesn't really have that. Revenant doesn't have any way to get in their opponent's face and do anything dangerous. They don't like their. This is another thing. This is slightly tangential, but also part of the issue. Their condition application right now, it feels too attrition based. Like they don't have any kind of burst. It's kind of like
Isn't that what it should be though? Isn't that what condition damage is supposed to be in a sense?
yes, but it's like not even that. It's just not enough. Period. Like
well, when you compare it to burning, not even close.
well,
That's
no,
the
but
problem, right?
But
No?
it's kind of like even it's kind of like certain condition necromancer builds, and I suppose a better example would be condition warrior. Like condition warrior, it's yeah you can throw a bunch of bleeds on someone, but they can cleanse that one stack of bleed, and then you're done. Like you have to revamp that. You have to re-ramp that condition stack up again, and it's
Right.
just there's too much attrition on enough burst for that class's conditions to really work well. If you look at say a condition mesmer or a well played condition terrormancer, they can just blow you up with condies. Like they are really good about applying conditions, applying a wide variety of conditions that all do high damage, and they kind of embody that heavy condition damage user that can burst with conditions. Whereas if you look at say a condition warrior or condition revenant or maybe not as well played condition necromancer, they have a decent amount of either one condition or two conditions that they can throw up, but those get cleansed easily, or they have a wide spread of conditions, but none of those conditions are really all that intensive. It's more about just kind of keeping them debilitated. There's no real threat damage wise from that widespread of conditions. That's Revenant is basically the widespread version, but not
Without lack of pressure.
yeah, with no pressure basically.
Wow.
It's they just don't feel powerful enough in that condition role right now, and it could very well be because they lack that power line, and there could be some traits in that power line that really help that. It could be that just the numbers are not tuned right now. It could be the fact that a lot of their animations on the mace and axe, which are their conditioned weapons, are slow and have not that great of a chance of hitting against competent opponents.
Right.
There's a lot of things that are working against the Revenant right now that are just they're not balanced well enough, as well as what I just said with the whole piece is missing. So I mean, I'm not. I've been seeing a lot of people just around the forums and like on Twitch when I was like, "Oh, Revenant is garbage. Oh, this class is doomed." Blah blah. Like, you can't say that. Like, it's not done. It's a work in progress class. It's missing entire pieces. Like, you can't say, "Oh, this class is garbage. It's going to be absolute garbage when the expansion comes out." No, you can't say that because it's not done.
Right.
And it's actually,
And
I was going to say, it's actually a good thing they're letting us try it out right now because then we can give all this feedback.
now, again, this sort of brings back a little bit of an argument that I wanted to bring up earlier was that, again, I think what's really, really, really pushing the Revenant out was not only the lack of skills that they're supposed to have access to, but again, the certain professions being, again, over the top in that specific area, like we discussed. It was sort of like the instance a while ago where mesmers weren't viable in play because they were essentially thief food. You know what I mean? That's essentially what it was for the longest time. That's why you almost never had a mesmer on your teams because the other team always ran a thief, and throughout the whole match, that mesmer couldn't do anything whatsoever because the thief was on that mesmer constantly. Now, this could be another reverse situation of that to where you have those two classes, which are incredibly fast and can interrupt in a consistent manner against the Revenant, which I don't know. I didn't see this, but I didn't see any oh shit buttons on the Revenant.
They don't have any.
They have no oh shit buttons.
All of their oh shit buttons have long cast times. Like,
Oh.
the only thing I can think of that, like, okay, it's either a long cast time or a high energy cost, which it may have been just because I'm bad at Revenant, but I was having a very hard time keeping energy levels higher on say when I was playing Ventari or whatever. I wasn't able to really get the energy up there enough to use the elite to explode the tablet and get all those little healing fragments.
Right.
I have a feeling a large part of that is due to the fact that I just wasn't playing it properly and I was still feeling the class out. But the best example I can give is on the dwarf on Jalis. His elite is a giant AoE damage reduction buff. It gives, I think it's like 50% reduced damage to yourself and everyone around you.
Nice.
5 people around you. The thing is, it takes about as long, maybe not quite as long, but almost as long, maybe 3.5, 4 seconds to cast. And that's like your Signet of Resolve, the new Signet you got.
Are you talking about Rite of the Great Dwarf?
Yeah, Rite of the Great Dwarf. It's a long cast.
Yeah, almost 3 seconds looking at it.
And
wow, that is actually pretty decent.
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't think you get any stability while casting it, and yeah, you'd have to drop the stability road to get the stability needed to keep yourself from getting interrupted, and dropping that road means you cut out on energy that you need to cast that right skill, and it doesn't really work as an oh shit button because you need oh shit buttons to be instant activation or very quick activation, something that will save you in those oh shit moments. And
right.
It's just it takes too long to set up that skill that is supposed to save you. Like they just don't really have anything like that. I mean, the Ventari tablet is good for kind of keeping you away from needing an oh shit button. Like it has so much, like if you build yourself to use the tablet that have a lot of healing power, or if you set yourself up in a way that benefits the tablet use a lot, you can keep yourself alive pretty well. So you don't necessarily need an oh shit button in there, but for if you're not building healing power or you're not using Ventari, the class doesn't really have much that keeps it from just melting. Yeah, it doesn't really have a lot of self-sustain. Like for example, I was fighting someone was running an Axe Shield Greatsword warrior when we were doing some 1v1s. And it was very hard to keep myself alive. Like, there was nothing to really manage that burst that was coming out of there. Like, yeah, Revenants have 2 heals, but their cooldowns are so long that if you're fighting someone with a lot of burst, like a Thief or a Axe Warrior or a Mesmer, they're just gonna blow you up. And you can pop both your heals, but you'll be out of a heal for 25 seconds or so. And then it's just... it doesn't really have that self-sustaining thing. It either mandates taking Ventari, or it's just in a situation where it doesn't have option. It doesn't have a good way of managing high damage incoming other than building Bunker and going Jalis Ventari.
Right. It seems as if, and I've noticed with every single profession we've seen, there's at least one trait line that you must spec into for self-sustainability. It sounds like Ventari is just that, right? I could be wrong, but it sounds like that. So you now have dedicated 1 line to self-sustainability. You now have 2 more lines to work with, unfortunately. And if you don't take Ventari, it seems, again, based on what you're telling me, then you're in a whole world of hurt, right? So in essence, I kind of agree with that simple fact, because you shouldn't just be able to take, again, 3 DPS lines and expect to out-sustain somebody who, took something that has more self-sustainability but less damage. So I get that, in a sense. I get it, that they don't have any self-sustainability outside that. But should they have a ton of self-sustainability outside of something that is built for sustainability?
Well, no, I'm not saying like, oh, buff Ventari or buff Jal. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying they need help. They're too low. They're too weak right now. They don't have anything to really keep themselves alive very well at all outside of building Bunker. And that's the thing I'm talking about. And I was gonna say, with the whole going through DPS lines and out-sustain someone who's gone full or have some sustain. I mean, my warrior build, I go strength, arms, discipline, and I blow people up, even if they're built kind of bunkery.
It's interesting, huh?
Yeah.
It almost makes me feel as if, and I went back to this in terms of Guardian, where I looked at that and I'm like, that should be the base class and just build from there, since it was so fair. I look at Revenant now and I'm like, that seems even more fair, with how weak they are. Maybe we should just build from there and everybody else and just go from there. But I don't know how I feel about that, because again, it sounds like they really are just incredibly weak outside of bunkery support,
Yeah.
and it may just be outside of their control. You know?
Like one of my ideas for a remedy for at least helping them. I mean, damage numbers are probably something that need to be looked at. But again, we're missing entire pieces of it, so I don't want to touch damage numbers. What I think would definitely help Revenant is just increase the cast speed of some of their skills. Like you could leave a lot of the hammer stuff kind of the way it is now. You could leave the staff stuff right now. The things that specifically catch my eye that are too long of a cast are a majority of the Axe Mace skills. So like the number 2, the number 5, and maybe the number 3 is kind of fine for the mace, but it's mainly the 2 and the 5. Those have massive windups or massive tells for not really that much payoff. And the number 5 on the hammer. Like, all of those feel way too slow for what they do right now. Either increase the payoff at the end of them or increase the cast speed of those, because they're too slow for how little anything they do. I mean,
Right.
granted, the number 2 on the mace gives you a giant fire field that you can then combo into the number 3 and get some might going, and it's a triple blast finisher, but it still feels too slow even for that.
Now, do you think that that was the reason for it, was of the consistent fire fields for the ability to potentially stack might? I could definitely see Celestial Amulet taking advantage of this heavily,
Yes,
but I could see that. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's what they were looking into, was the fact that you can really drop down these fire fields every 5 seconds and potentially blast them 3 times. Now, I'm not saying it's obviously going to happen 3 times, but the potential is definitely there. You
Yeah.
think maybe they took that into consideration?
Yeah, I think that ties into the issue of there's not enough payoff on it, because you can drop those every 5 seconds, but they are a line AoE. Your opponent can stand out of them, and if you do happen to catch your opponent in them, the burning you get off of that doesn't last very long. The burning
Right.
that you get off of it it's like 1 stack per second. I think he's staying in there, and it only lasts, I think, a second or maybe 2. It does not last very long, and that's like, if they want to keep that cast time, all they would need to do is just up the severity of the burning on that field, because it's easy to dodge. It's
It's
easy.
a field.
Yeah, it's
I
a
mean,
field. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff involved with it. Um,
that's something that I've wanted them to actually look into for a lot of skills in the game. That if you're applying a skill within a small area, it should be stronger than skills that don't have that limitation. But we don't. It doesn't seem like that is the case for a lot of skills in the game, including the Revenant from what we just saw. Right? You apply this little burning field in a tiny area, which with any competent player who has half a brain is going to be like, I'm not going to stand in that, and they just walk out. You know.
Yeah.
So I think what they need to do is look at skills like that. It's not just Revenant. You have to look at skills like that and think, okay, if this is a skill that has to be effective in a tiny area, it better be powerful because of that stipulation.
yeah, kind of like your symbols in some
Let's not speak
respects.
of symbols. Let's not speak of symbols.
Oh,
They don't
man.
exist.
But yeah, I agree. Like, if it's gonna be such a small area, it's got to be powerful. It's got to do something. I mean, Dragon Hunter, you're gonna get some nice stuff that have big AoEs, but I mean, the stipulation is they're traps. Your opponent has to come into them. But even still, like, it's I've seen what they can do. They probably tuned the numbers down, but from what they showed us, Dragon Hunter traps hurt a lot.
Yeah, that's something else. I mean, I haven't really looked into it, honestly. I think the cooldowns are way too long, so I'm probably not going to touch them. But it's again, like I said, if you also need to take into consideration, like, there is, like, when you look at, say, marks for an instance. The reason why I think marks are actually in an area is because that damage or that effect is front loaded. You don't have to stand in there for more than a second. As soon as it's on you, the damage or the effect is done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's already done its intended effect. You know, the Revenant burning field, the symbols, you need to keep that target in that area for multiple seconds for it to work.
Yeah.
And that is a problem because, again, these skills are not front loaded. You know what I mean? And if you don't have any soft CC to keep them in there, then it's just a waste of a skill, at least from my point of view.
Yeah. And I mean, I can appreciate that. Like, some of the stuff I've noticed on this class, they're trying to make it a high skill class. They're trying to make it a very involved class, akin to like what you have to do with a lot of Mesmer stuff, where you have to be very involved. You have to be keeping track of a lot of things. I appreciate what they're trying to do with Revenant for sure, but it seems like there are things that are missing from its kit, and again, it is missing weapons and trait lines and all that, but it's missing things that really help it achieve some of the stuff it sets up for. Like, yeah, you can do the cool little Mace 2 followed by Mace 3, get the might combo going and all that. You can do the teleports across and maybe chill someone and then drop the fire field. Like, you can do cool stuff with it, but it's it needs soft CC. It needs more soft CC to really help it take advantage of those fields or like that rift or keeping people around for them to unleash a lot of what their potential is. There were two other things that I noticed on the Revenant that bugged me. One is the legend swapping is it's stuck at 10 seconds, and I don't know if this is because they're gonna throw it in the power line or if which wouldn't make sense because they have a profession specific line, just like a lot of other classes that you would think would have this. I would think they would want to put that down to 5 seconds because they don't have weapon swapping. So just like
Isn't that their weapon swapping though? Essentially.
it's more akin to kit swapping or attunement swapping, and those have traits that affect those. Well, kits don't because they're
Instant, yeah.
they're instant, but elemental attunements do. Elementals attunements they have a cooldown effect on them. Or
That's what I always thought it
traits.
was. It was just essentially manipulating, or I'm sorry, just another weapon swap. That's what I always considered it to
Yeah,
be, was the legends, because there are different skills that you are swapping to, you know. So that's what I've always thought it was. I thought that was akin to.
yeah, and I mean, look at warriors. We have a 5 second weapon swap because we're the weapon masters. We're balanced around having two weapon sets that we swap between quickly. Um, Revenants don't have anything like that, and I feel like they could benefit from having that for certain playstyles. Like I could see like there are viable warrior builds that don't take fast hands that are built around kind of camping a weapon set for a while and then switching to something else a bit more specialized. You do have elementals builds that don't take attunement swapping speed increases. They kind of camp attunements a bit more. I could see that being fine for the Revenant too, but it would be nice to have that option for the people who want to give that kind of play style to people who want fast legend swapping, people who can kind of have this one set of stuff ready whenever they need it and then swap over to the other style or the other gameplay style. Like, it's not going to break anything because, like, for example, with the heals have their own individual cooldowns. The heals are both 30 seconds each. They're tracked while you're not in that stance. Like, that having a faster legend swap isn't going to break the heals or anything like that. It would just give people more options between, or give people more tools in their toolkit while they're fighting. It would give them more options while they're fighting. And as far as I'm concerned, certain playstyles need that, and it helps improve the flavor of a class.
Now, this is something that I'm curious about as well. I've always thought of weapon swapping to be part of the tactical gameplay in which it resides of this game. What I mean by that is, if I'm fighting you and then I see that I'm popping a skill when I shouldn't have, and I swap to my next weapon skill by accident, that should punish me in essence. I mean, while I while I understand that it adds to the fluidity of the combat by increasing, or actually rather decreasing, the cooldown of it, I actually kind of like the potential, the risk involved with, oh shit, I just swapped to this weapon when I shouldn't have, or I made that mistake, now I have to work with what I have for the next 10 seconds, and even then it may not work just by switching back. Do you think that's what they took into consideration?
Could have been, yeah. Like this is kind of an issue that is like I it would be nice to have, but I will openly admit that I am spoiled by my warrior, and I am biased to kind of have those faster switchings, both with the warrior and with my elementalist. It's like, if they don't want it to be that way, I can completely understand it. If they want it to be, you kind of stick to one, and then when you feel you need to switch to another, and then you have that kind of, oh hey, I accidentally switched, that punishes me type thing, punishing bad play like that. That's understandable. I'm not saying ANET you need to put in a 5 second legend swap. It's just
Right.
something to consider, like an option for that type of play style is what I'm kind of getting at.
Right, I get it, absolutely, and I hear you out. It's just I've always thought that in the back of my head of, of the reason why is why they put certain cooldowns on specific classes or giving you the option to reduce said cooldown if you trade into it. I've always thought that there was a specific reason behind it, and my reason was that you know is the risk involved of potentially swapping when you shouldn't.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you do have a very different perspective than I do because your main doesn't have any fast weapon swapping. You have the 10-second on the Guardian, whereas I've got the 5 on the Warrior. Like you have a very different perspective, and it's good that you have that perspective because it adds a nice dynamic to the conversation.
Without a doubt.
Now, the other thing that was kind of bugging me, and I don't know why, because it felt fine in the previous demos that I played the Revenant on, where there's okay in the corruption line, which is the condition, Malik's stance oriented trait line, or whatever. There is a trait that gives you resistance whenever you use a demon stance skill, whenever you use one of those Malik skills. For some reason, I don't know if it's just because now I was actually able to PvP with it more, or I was able to PvP against really good players or players who knew how to handle their condition builds, but it felt like the resistance that I was getting from that trait was not enough. It was nowhere near enough because I was like, go ahead.
No, I wasn't talking. My finger. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. But it just felt like it wasn't enough to really stave off all the conditions. Like it feels like Metalix is all about getting all these conditions on you and then throwing them back on your target, or getting stronger as a result of having all these conditions on you. And while yes, the heal gets more powerful when you have more Connies on you, and the elite gets more powerful when you have more Connies, they're still Connies. They are still hurting you. Like they're still gonna eat you alive if it's a heavy Connie user. And like specifically with the well, I guess I just thought of this, but I'll mention anyway. The heal, it feels like it has too long of a cast time. It's almost like consume conditions long. Like I don't know if it's exactly that long, but it feels long, which falls back into what we were saying with slow attacks, easy to interrupt. That it feels like it's too easy to interrupt, and when you have that many conditions on you, you need that heal to be going off. Otherwise, you're going to be dying. And the other thing that I noticed with all of that was with the conditions is the Malik's Elite. Yes, it's cool that you basically have a pulsing epidemic, more or less, that's based off of what you have. But the things I noticed with it when I was using it was, one, it's a rather limited area. Like, if you're fighting, say, a condition necromancer, a good Terramancer, who's throwing all these conditions on you at, 600 range, 700 range, a decent range, the area of that elite is not that big. Like, you have to be able to get to them.
Yeah, it's pretty much melee what I'm looking at.
Yeah,
it's about 240 radius, which again, it's about the size actually of a mark. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it is.
It's not that big. Like, if it's a melee Condi user, then yeah, sure, you can throw them back on them. And I was able to kind of stick to a Necro a decent amount when I was testing it out. But, I mean, you can only really close the gap once every so often with that Axe 4. It was kind of hard to stick to it. And then the other thing that I noticed was, are those, like, this isn't really something I noticed, but it came to my mind while I was using it, are those conditions that you're pulsing out based on your condition damage, or you're the person applying them? Because I have a feeling it just copies conditions and then applies them using your stats, which if you're fighting someone using a lot of condition damage and melting you, but you have Malik stance to try and deal with conditions, is kind of like a condition removal or management part of your kit, and you don't have a lot of it, you don't have a lot of condition stat damage, whatever, and you're trying to throw them back on them, it's not really an even playing field. It's because you're not removing those conditions, you're just copying them off of yourself onto someone else, and then you both have those conditions. So I don't know, it feels like something needs to be done to tone those conditions up, since it isn't elite, or I don't know, it just, the Malik stance feels weird right now. It feels weird. Like it feels like there's something off about it that needs addressing. It's really hard to pinpoint what it is because you have just all of these different aspects of it that feel not right. Like the elite, the heal, the resistance timing. Like it just, something's off. They
Well,
don't.
looking at it, and again, this is just again from my perspective of how I believe or how I think of balance is right off the bat, it has no cooldown. That's one thing that really struck me. So again, it does degenerate your resources, and that's obviously how it's supposed to work. I get that. Um, and then again, if you trade into it, you can get that 2 seconds of resistance when you enter a stance. You know, I think that's kind of what it was supposed to be meant for. Was you weren't supposed to be immune to Kandis. You're supposed to still take damage because if that wasn't the case, then you could consistently keep popping the stance and then just be immune and just like spread the shit everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think that maybe they took that into consideration. And secondly, the one thing that caught me off, well, I agree, it is very short range. 240 is not very long range at all. It's really not. However, it's AoE.
Yeah.
So again, if you're in a decent, if you're in a multiple fight with like a 2v2 or a 3v3 and you're in melee range, you're applying it to everybody. So I think that's what they took into consideration. Now, if this was like a single target skill, like if you were targeting it to one person and not in an AoE, then yeah, I could see the range being increased without a doubt. But I think the reason why they made the range so short is because it is AoE.
Yeah.
And it applies it to multiple opponents. So I haven't played it in real time. You have much more experience. I'm just going off the description that I'm seeing here. And the biggest thing I'm looking at is, again, no cooldown. Secondly, again, when you're reapplying the condition, I think to answer your question earlier about it's putting it back on your opponent, if it's like anything else that that transfers conditions, because I've noticed it with every single condition transfer skill in the game, it goes off the original user's condition damage, every single one, from the Plague Signet to Arcane 3 to Arcane 3 to Generosity Sigil, it goes off the condition of the original user. So I think that's what it does, which is actually really good for Revenants who, like you said, who don't spec into condition damage, if it's going off that.
Yeah.
Which, I can tell you from experience, any sort of transfer always goes off the person who originally applied it.
Yeah. I suppose you've had a number of your burns thrown back at you, right?
Yeah. Oh, dude, yeah. And again, it's by my condition damage. It's always by mine. So I do believe that is exactly what it is.
Yeah. Now, all of those are perfectly valid. And like, yeah, a lot of the testing I did with Malix this beta test so far has been 1v1. So like, there's a lot of that I need to actually get in more Conquest and Stronghold matches and test Malix Kandi stuff out a bit more to test that out. In the actual matches, I mainly did some of the bunker stuff, but. Yeah, like you are 100% correct. Like it has no cooldown. It is AoE, so like in a team fight, like you can really put this thing to work, and like I can understand it being balanced that way. The only thing with the no cooldown thing is it absolutely destroys your energy resource. Like it eats a lot, and that I don't know.
How long does it last? Like say I pop it on with full energy. How long will it last me? Because I have no idea.
If you do nothing else, it'll stay up for a good while. But that's the problem. If you
can't do anything else, yeah.
If you do nothing else, and I mean, it's the energy stuff. Like, it's really hard to say whether or not it's enough or it's too much or anything like that. Because again, none of this is final. I've only really tested it in 1v1s. I haven't given it enough playtime to say fully, oh yeah, this is too much energy or blah blah blah. But it feels like. I don't know. It just, like I was saying before, it feels off. It's really hard to pinpoint what exactly could be fixed, at least from my perspective. But it's something like just the Malik stance in general feels off. There's something missing from it. There's something that it can't reach its full potential for some inexplicable reason. Like some factor is preventing it from really being super strong. And again,
right.
I'm going to do more testing. Maybe my opinion on this will all change after I do some testing on it, but from what I could see before, it doesn't have that pressure. It doesn't have that push that I feel like it should, like it's trying to have.
Right. Now, this is sort of going back to what we were discussing before with their lack of soft CC. Do they have mobility? Like, how's their mobility? I know they have a leap that displaces you, but that's all I saw. What else do they have for mobility?
They have the Axe 4 and they have the Staff 5.
That's it.
That's it.
Really?
That's it.
That's probably why you think. That's probably the reason why it might be missing something, is because it is lacking soft CC and or mobility.
Yeah,
that's probably what it is, honestly.
Yeah. And if the power stance, the power everything, does involve swords, and it does involve the Desiro legend, then there's a good chance that it could be that could be what solves a lot of these issues. Because I think I didn't play a lot of Guild Wars 1, but as far as I'm aware, the Shield guy he teleported all over the place. He was really fast, really agile. He could stick to people. He would just did all these crazy mobility things. And if they're going with the themes of those characters, then that would give the Revenant a lot of mobility. Swords,
Right.
just by their theme in Guild Wars 2, typically have mobility tied to them in some fashion. So yeah, that could very well be the missing piece, the missing link in what is giving me these weird feelings about the pressure is because we don't have that. There's no mobility with Revenant right now, other than some kind of meh movement skills.
Right, exactly. And I think that's exactly what it is. We're missing skills, we're missing traits, we're missing a ton of stuff. And I like how they're allowing us, or allowing you, mostly because you pre-order it and you
Yeah.
have more personal experience to test it. But I also think this is a double-edged sword. And what I mean by that is, if you're allowing me to beta test something, or give me everything. Give me
Yeah.
what you have. Give me everything and see what's going on, so that I can see like, oh, okay, this works with this, or maybe this doesn't go far enough with that. Because right now you can't give feedback because you don't have any feedback to give, because you don't have the trait lines to comment on, you don't have the skills to comment on. So that was kind of a little bit of an issue that I have, is because they may just have exactly what you're looking for. They may have that mobility to keep you and Malik's stance, and you to stick on your target, but you don't know that for certain, do you? So that's the problem that I kind of have. Is I was hoping that they would give you everything, regardless of how broken or unbroken it was.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I've been thinking about that very thing. This entire beta test is like, okay, you're giving us all this Revenant stuff, and it's cool that you're giving us, Ventari and Jalos and Malix and all of the traits you've got right now, and all the weapons tied to them, blah blah blah. That's cool. It allows us to give the feedback on those, but it's kind of hard to get a full idea, a full picture, full feedback without all of the pieces, and it really sucks when I'm trying to give feedback on things and I constantly have to reiterate or constantly have to keep in my mind that it's not done yet. It's missing giant pieces. We don't know what the other factors or other skills it has. It's nice that they're giving us stuff to give feedback on, but it does really suck, like you were saying, that we don't have everything. And there's, like you said, there could be that very thing with the power spec. There could be that
Yeah.
very thing with that weapon set that really helps solve a lot of these problems, but we're not going to know that because we don't have access to it. We don't even know what it is. I mean, again, there are hints, there's been data mining, all that fun stuff, but we don't have solid, conclusive evidence of what the skills are, what they do, what their theme is, none of that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of two minds on it. I'm glad they're letting us give feedback on what exists, but I'm also not happy that we don't have the full set because I really hate giving conclusions on incomplete things.
Right, exactly. And again, it wouldn't be so bad as if they gave you everything, regardless of how incomplete it was. Because at least because again, with most skills and traits that I've seen, they tend to keep the theme of the trait of what it is. They just adjust the numbers.
Yeah,
So at least you could have an idea of exactly what you're working with, but now you don't have that. So I think that's exactly what it is. You're just missing those lines, those skills to see exactly what you're working with here. So I think that's what it is, and I'm hoping that's exactly what it is, because that sounds like the issue that you were having, is that you couldn't stick to your target. You were not fast enough, or you didn't have the CC to do it. So I think that's probably why Malix felt so clunky, I
yeah,
think.
yeah. Like the bunker stuff feels fine. If you build bunker, it's a lot of fun. The Ventari stance is a ton of fun to use. You can keep yourself alive pretty well. Like it's got a lot of cool stuff if you build bunker. It feels pretty good as a bunker. It feels good as a support, like keeping your allies alive, like I did in the conquest matches. I was able to jump in team fights and keep people alive. That the projectile barrier on the tablet is a ton of fun to use. It's like, oh hey, you can't hit anyone, and you can just sit there and free res people. It's a ton of fun.
Nice.
But the only my main gripe with the Ventari tablet, and again this could have just been because I'm not good with the class or I'm still learning it, is it was really hard to get enough energy to use the condition clear and the elite on the tablet. But I don't know. I'm not going to mess with numbers. That could have just been me. I want to be sure it's me or not before I say, oh, you should totally decrease the energy cut. No, I'll
Right.
wait. Yeah, so like the support and bunker of Revenant feels pretty good right now. It's just it has no pressure. It feels slow. It feels easy to interrupt. It doesn't have like it doesn't feel like it has enough damage. It's all that stuff we just talked about. So like offensively, it feels very underpowered. Defensively, it feels pretty good right now. If you want, if I were to give just kind of a general, these are my impressions of it right now type thing.
Right, right. And that's good because it seems like they might have one side of the coin which is actually decently strong, which is the bunker support side, which is good. Again, you need more bunker support classes in the game, so that's really nice to see.
Yeah. Now we were gonna do a shorter episode. We're gonna go aim for like an hour or so. We got a little bit of time left. You want to jump on Stronghold a little bit? Because I mean,
Yeah,
it's
let's do
back.
that.
It's back.
I played a
But
little bit, dude, and if I it, they changed a couple of things, but from what I remember, and I stuck with the original strategy that because remember they did that tournament a little while ago, and I got to play with Radioactive's team.
yep,
We
yep. I
actually had a
remember
lot of
that.
fun.
Yeah.
I stuck to that strategy like before. So the first match that I went into is I played pure defensively, and it actually worked out pretty well. We still got it, and but then I switched immediately to pure offensively. Like I just left the bottom lane, well, that's what I call it, the bottom lane for defensively, and just went full in, and that actually worked out really good too, especially since. And all I was doing was spawning door breakers. That's it. I
Yeah.
didn't even bother with archers because I assumed that they still probably didn't buff archers enough to where they would be a threat. And to me, they didn't feel like a threat. So I still went with that strategy, just like in the tournament. And I got to tell you, it still worked.
Yeah. Well, I
So
mean,
archers still seem useless.
yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. This time it feels like archers are a bit more meaningful. Like they run faster. I saw what they can do to guards now. They destroy guard. Like
Do
before
they?
they were before it was like I think maybe like 3 or 4 hits they could take a guard down. Now I think it's like two. Like they can just destroy guards
Right,
ridiculously
right.
fast. Um, but like I've always, or I shouldn't say I've always. This test I've noticed that I need to kill archers when I see them, but I still kind of like you. I kind of prioritize building door breakers over everything
Yeah.
else. So I think yeah maybe archers need a little more. Maybe they can run faster. But I don't know. I never really looked at the minion aspect of the gameplay. I've always looked at kind of other aspects of it, what I am doing to fight other players or to contribute to the match. And yeah, I haven't really done a whole lot of Stronghold matches because I've been doing so much stuff with the Revenant. But it seems like there's a bit more. I don't know. It feels like there's a bit more strategy involved now. It feels like there's a bit more. It's not so much, at least compared to the previous test. It feels like there's more like moving around the map a bit more. There's less bum rushing on offense, like all full offense. I like the fact that now the supply in the center is limited, and I like the fact that if you die behind enemy lines, you drop supply. So that gives kind of that counter push.
That is kind of neat. Yes, I
Yeah.
saw that.
So like if defenders successfully defend and they keep the entire other team from getting in, and you've just wiped their other team in your base, boom, you can throw just a ton of NPCs down your lane, and they're gonna have to commit more people to that, or they're gonna have to do something to handle all of those NPCs. Because I mean, if you can drop 10 NPCs running down a lane, the AoE cap is still 5. I mean, even if you drop, say, a necromancer down there dropping marks and stuff, you're only gonna hit 5 of those at a time, especially
Right.
if you spawn them well enough to where they're all nice and bunched up. I mean, I don't know. I like the tweaks they've made. I haven't really done anything with the Treb. I haven't noticed anything with the Treb. I haven't noticed anyone using the Treb. I haven't done many Stronghold matches this test yet, but I don't know. Supposedly the Treb's way better. I
The Treb
haven't.
was good to begin with, from what I remember.
Yeah,
It instantly destroyed NPCs, so I was surprised that they buffed it.
yeah.
I mean, honestly.
It seems nice, but I've never really interacted with it other than having it blow up a few of my offensive lane during that tournament.
Right.
But
I noticed that again with that tournament that's exactly what we did, and that's what we fought against in a lot of cases when we were pushing heavily, like against I forgot that team's name. It was the second to the last before we fought the Abjured, and they utilized the Treb, and immediately as a guardian I'm like teleporting up there knocking them off. So It's still. I was very surprised to see them buff it. I mean, it could have needed the buff, but it still felt like Treb in general was incredibly strong to begin with. The damage was still ridiculously high. It was really easy to pull out. It was literally, you don't even have to hold down the button. You just put it in the direction of where your gate is and you tap it. That is it.
Yeah.
So that's why, again, I was very, very surprised to see a buff in that regard. So Treb was strong to begin with.
Yeah. I do think it's pretty interesting that they included to where it'll remove pretty much all of this ability on anyone that it hits on the other team. Because now if it hits players, or just not just players, if it hits something on the opposing team, it removes up to 25 stacks of stability.
Yeah, like you're going to have 25 to begin with.
I know,
Yeah.
but
well, that seemed a little weird to me. I'm like, no one is going to have 25 to begin with at all.
I think that's just there because they can. But like it's interesting that they added that, because now it really is an option for if you decide to, hey, they're channeling the Mist Hero, you can just turn it over there and boom. Like
I have a question for you on that. Do we know if that removes it and still knocks them back, or does it just remove it and then the next hit will knock them back after they have the stability removed?
I would imagine to fit the goal they're trying to go with that change, it knocks them down as well as removes the stacks.
Okay, gotcha.
I would imagine, yeah. I would imagine it's probably it removes stability and then applies the knockdown effect.
Right. Thank you. Again, I wasn't sure, and I was very, very curious.
Yeah, that would be my guess. Again, I haven't really interacted with the Treb in any aspect of this test, so I mean, I don't know how it truly works, but I would imagine, based on what the idea behind that change is, it'll remove stability and knockdown.
Okay, perfect. Again, it's always good to clarify. But again, it was good. It was really, really fun. The matches were fun. I would still, and this is something that was told to me, and I at first I was like, "There's no way this is going to take into effect." And after playing the matches, it still reinforced my argument was that the builds were going to change. No, they didn't change actually.
Not really.
The builds that we're conquering in Conquest are still going to be ridiculously strong in Stronghold, because the vast majority of those builds are still mobile. They can still apply damage, and they don't have to do it within a specific area. So in general, I was very surprised to see that to be the case, because it is a completely different type of game. It's you're not holding a point anymore. So I was surprised to see that, but and at the end of the day, I was like, yeah, you know what? I mean, a lot of the builds that were dominating in Conquest, they don't have very many limitations to it. You know, they don't have to stay in a specific area. They don't have to. They're still very, very mobile. They're still very sustainable. They still put out a decent amount of Connie cleave in pressure. So that is sort of what surprised me and also disappointed me in that fact, is I was actually hoping to see different builds that would support that specific playstyle or that map, but there really wasn't, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I haven't really noticed any Conquest builds really popping up and causing issues as far as like the bunker ones, because I mean, a lot of those got wrecked when the specialization changes came through, like Shoutbow, because the previous set Shoutbow actually did pretty well in Stronghold as well. Like, it was very good for keeping people alive, keeping NPCs alive, all that stuff. But I don't know if it was just because the match I played didn't have any shot bows, or because of how they are now in Conquest. But yeah, like if they're as powerful in Stronghold as they are in Conquest now, they're not going to be able to really do much. Like, you might be able to escort NPCs with shot bow now, but you're not going to be able to like hold a room or hold a line against a bunch of players. Nah,
in fact,
not anymore.
Shoutbow is incredibly weak now.
It is.
Especially, again, I hate to be biased, but as a Burn Guardian, I just laugh at Shoutbows nowadays. It's amazing how quickly the tables have turned in that regard with the changes. And it wasn't even just buffs; it was just a byproduct of them changing, condition damage scaling.
Yeah.
So I was surprised. I honestly was expecting, and again, just to go a little bit off, I was expecting Shoutbow to still be strong. But no, they've actually fallen off pretty bad.
Oh yeah, they did nerf some of our like healing and heal scaling with vigorous shouts. They healed our adrenaline generation. I just like heal. I meant nerf. They nerfed a lot more than was immediately apparent with Shotbow, and I'm happy. Like I never liked that build. It was very low risk for high reward, or very low input for high reward. Like it was. I'm glad it's dead.
Right.
Now,
but now you have Rampage.
Oh, okay, but that's easy. That all you have to do is turn down the numbers. Problem solved. Like, Rampage is ridiculous, but they can just turn down the numbers.
Do you think it's more ridiculous now in Stronghold?
It's
I'm
ridiculous everywhere.
curious.
It is ridiculous everywhere. Like Rampage is too strong everywhere. Like it doesn't matter where you have it. It's just a lot of if you run a strength defense discipline Marauder Warrior with Rampage with peak performance, you are going to rip everyone's faces out. It's ridiculous. Like I I can't defend it anymore. Like before the patch, I was like, yeah, it's strong, but it can be counterplayed. It's not so much damage that it'll just wreck your face.
I think I've been two-shotted by it once. I swear to God.
Yeah, I could see
I
that.
think I have.
I could see that.
I think something like hit me for 9K. I'm like, what? So it's pretty funny, but whatever. It is what it is. I mean, I'm sure they're looking into it. I'm fairly certain on it. But just to go back to Stronghold, like I said, the strategies used before the patch in that tournament, it didn't seem like they changed. It still seemed like the other strategies before were just as effective.
Yeah.
Because again, you're still pushing door breakers. Archers are still nothing to you. You still destroy them relatively easily, and you need those door breakers to get to the Lord. So, and besides, at the end of the day, what the game really boils down to, or not, what Stronghold really boils down to is team fights. Just like in Conquest, that's exactly what it boils down to. Whoever wins that team fight, whoever wipes the other team is going to win. Now you have more counterplay to that to wipe an enemy team who's in your base now, which with the supply drop, like you mentioned, which is actually really awesome. Because before, if I say I'm in your base and I'm going for your Lord and you wipe my team, there's really still nothing else you can really do. Honestly, there's really nothing that allows you to counter us. You know what I mean? You're still in that shitty spot.
Yeah.
We're still gonna push you again. There's nothing that you can do to stop us.
Yeah.
So, but now they kind of gave you an incentive to drop more supply and to reinforce your lines.
Yeah. Like it is. You're very right that it's still like if you get pushed hard, it's kind of hard to be able to push hard back because the other team could just go on defense, kill all your stuff while spawning all their stuff, and then boom, you're back in the same situation. So yeah, there definitely still needs to be more kind of like ways to help defenders against like full man pushing. But I do agree that it's better. It does feel better now with those supply drops from players who die in your base. It definitely feels better. The mode definitely feels better than
it
did.
Is it enough? Let's put that situation again. Say I'm pushing you. We're pushing as far as we can. We get to your lore room, but you guys wipe us. Is that enough to really give you guys that second wind? Or should it be enough rather? Because I don't know.
I don't know. I haven't done enough Conquest or enough Stronghold matches this beta test to really get a feel for it yet. So I'll have to get back to you on that one.
I'm just curious because again, I look at it two ways. I look at it this way: like if you're pushing me so hard that you're in my base consistently, then it seems like a learn to play issue on my end. You know what I mean? And that if I wipe you, it should give me a momentary reprieve.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't allow me to just completely dominate you in counterplay because I was able to get that team wipe off. So I think that might have been what it was designed for, was the simple fact that, yes, it's meant to give you a momentary, bit of, to catch your breath, but it's not meant to be like, oh shit, we just wiped their team. Now we can destroy them,
Yeah. I agree that it shouldn't be like, oh hey, you made the mistake of wiping in our base. Now we're just going to completely run you over because now we have it. No, I agree that it shouldn't be like that. But I do like it as a maybe not necessarily like a way of getting back on your feet. That's a good way of putting it. Like a way of getting back on your feet and back into the match after you've just been pushed super hard. I like it as it is in that regard. I don't know how it feels overall because again I haven't done enough matches, but I like it as a recovery mechanic, but I agree with you. I don't want it to be like a complete turnaround type thing either.
Right. And I still think that the and this is gonna be weird when I say this, but it still feels like Conquest, because at the end of the day, it's like I said before, it's gonna come down to, is my team better than yours? In essence of fighting. Yes, there's going to be some strategic value of, which NPCs to spawn and where you need to be, like if there's a hero spawning. But at the end of the day, let's be honest. I mean, if I wipe you more than you wipe me, I pretty much guaranteed I'm gonna beat you. You know what I mean? In essence, does that make sense?
Yeah, but isn't that a good thing? Because
absolutely.
Yeah, I was gonna say a gripe a lot of people have been or maybe a gripe that a lot of uninformed people have had, that I should probably say, is it's like, oh, it's so much PvE. There's no PvP. Blah blah blah. Like it's having it this way enforces that PvP aspect of it. I like
Oh,
that.
absolutely, without a doubt. Yeah. No, I'm just the way I'm wording it is that I like it that way, but I was kind of hoping that there would be more other strategic value added to it outside of that, because again, it just feels like conquest, which is not a bad thing. Again, if my team, we're fighting against each other. If my team wins or your team wins, then just we're the better team at the time, and that's fine. But I was hoping there would be a little more in depth than just that.
Yeah,
It doesn't have to be NPC related. There could be some sort of other stipulation that you can do. But I was just curious because
yeah. I guess to me it still feels like a separate mode. I guess yeah, it does kind of feel a bit more like Conquest and how the players interact, but I'm happy with that. I like it being more player focused. I like it being more about how the teams interact with each other. It's a different way of going about it because there's more tactical play that goes on because yeah, you're focusing on like how you're spending supply and those missed champions and all that stuff. Like there's other aspects involved, but yeah, the team play definitely feels more conquesty. The player versus player aspect of it does feel a bit more conquesty right now, and I don't really see that as a bad thing. I like that PvP feel to it. I don't know. Again, I need to do more matches. I need to really feel it out. But
right.
yeah, I don't know.
Do you think they should add? Do you think they should look at specific builds and try and adjust them in essence of because again, like I said before, you still have the builds that are dominant in Conquest being dominant in Stronghold. Do you think that maybe that kind of needs to be looked at? Because again, they are completely different modes. So I would assume, or I would hope or think, that different builds that you would need different builds to adjust to that. But it doesn't seem like that's the case at all. People are still sticking to their true and tried and true builds, which have been working for them in Conquest, which still work incredibly well for Stronghold.
I guess I don't see conquest builds working in Stronghold as a bad thing. I just want Stronghold to be able to allow different builds as well. I want other builds to be able to work in Stronghold that wouldn't necessarily work in Conquest. Give a bit more breathing room to builds and build crafting and theory crafting and all that. Like I guess I don't really see a problem with Conquest. Like I just said this actually, but I don't see a problem with Conquest builds being fine in Stronghold so long as Stronghold also allows more builds to be viable as well.
Right, and again, they definitely do. And just to go off a little bit here, I got to say this, and I don't know if you've experienced this yet. Maybe you have or you haven't. It feels like after that, the 23rd patch, I actually feel more restricted to my builds than before. As weird as that sounds, because before you were able to sort of like not cherry pick what you wanted, and it's actually you kind of did was like I used to go 2 in one tree, 5 in another, so, to go into more trees. Now I'm stuck with just 3, right? And while yes, you technically have more trait points, it still feels more restrictive. Do you get that feeling with your class? Because as a guardian, I feel a lot more restrictive than I used to.
Um, yes and no. It's for okay, warrior. I feel like is kind of a special case because we have so many weapon options and so many things that can benefit so many different weapon options that we've always kind of had a lot of build variety. Like that's just how it's been since almost the launch of the game. Is warrior has
Right.
just had build variety up the wazoo, and I think for warrior having even that change and having it a bit more restricted to the specializations hasn't really changed that fact just because we have access to so many weapons. But I do agree for some other classes like guardian, like mesmer, like necro, like it does kind of feel a bit more restricted. But I almost want to say that it's not like that's not the entirety of what happened. It almost feels like it for some setups, yeah, it feels more restricted, but it also opened up access to a whole bunch of other setups. So it's like the build variety in the pre-patch scope, yeah, that got more restricted. But the overall scope of what's possible with this specialization system opened up. It's just the people's view was still kind of stuck in what we had before. So I mean, yes and no. I could see arguments made for both directions. I could see people feeling both ways. I am of the mind that there is still a lot of build variety there. What we have right now might feel a bit more restricted, but one thing we have to remember, one thing we have to keep in mind is they changed the system to be this way so they could add infinitely more options down the line. Like, it's going to feel weird now, but they made the system infinitely expandable. Like, they can just add more and more specialization lines just as they need, as they want, and it won't disrupt a whole bunch of stuff. Because if you look at the old system, trying to do that would really kind of, it wouldn't really work as well.
Right.
Like, now they can just kind of like, oh, hey, here's an idea for a theme of a trait line that we can put in for X expansion or X living story patch, whatever feature pack. That's just slotted in, and then boom, like you've just gotten a new specialization added. Like,
Right.
I'm willing to kind of deal with more restricted things right now for the benefit of having infinitely expandable options down the line. I can wait.
Right. That's understandable. It was just something that I was curious about because, again, just like what you were saying before, and if you look at the old system, you had, I think, 6 traits in the Adept, you had 4, no, was it 6 in the first, 4 in the second, and then 2 in the Grandmaster? Originally,
yeah, before they added new Grandmasters.
And then they added 2 new, then they added another Grandmaster. Yes, so technically by making it just 3, 3, and 3, it's a lot easier to work with because you're working with less.
Yeah.
Technically, it should be easier. So I'm really hoping for more consistency, and I can agree with what you're saying in that regard, and I'm hoping that that is the case.
Yeah. All right, so we've actually gone a little over the hour mark. There was one last thing I wanted to touch on, one last thing I wanted to get your opinion on before we go off, and this relates to Stronghold. What do you think of the Miss Champion thing they're doing, where you have different champions that you slot into your build, so to speak, and when you are the one to channel the essence in Stronghold, you get your champion out, and they have, you know, their war cries and their elites that they get when they go into the Lord Room and all that. What do you think about that? What's your opinion on that system they're doing instead of just being, you know, Tarai Asa everywhere?
Right. I like it because it's more diversity and it's more customization. But the one problem that I have with it, and this goes with almost every single game that I've ever played when it comes to actually having that type of diversity, is in most cases, and I hope that they're looking into this, there's always going to be one hero that's better than the others.
Yeah.
Just for some reason or another. Like, it can do 80% of the damage of the highest hero that you have, but be infinitely tankier. You know what I mean? So that is the issue that I kind of have, and I'm hoping that they look into it, is that one of the heroes, one of the 3, is going to be just that much stronger than the other 2, and then everyone's just going to pick it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's the problem that I have. I like that they're adding more. I think that's great, but that is something that I was been thinking about a lot. Like, someone's going to figure out which one of these is stronger than the rest, and then everyone's just going to run it. So that's my opinion on it, but I do like it. What do you think?
Yeah, I like it. I like you were just saying, I like that customization. I like the fact that you can have a bunch of people in your team when we have more heroes, for example, that like you could have one of 5 different, like each of your members has a different hero equipped, and then it's like, oh hey, we need this champion right now, so you go get the Miss Summon. Like you have that team coordination, that team play going on. You can kind of coordinate what your team strategy is built around, having those heroes and all that. I do really like that. It adds another aspect, another facet to how you build your comp for Stronghold. I like that. But I am with you that I'm worried about balancing. I'm worried about how are these heroes going to affect the balancing of teams, the balancing of the matches, what is going to end up being broken, what is end up going to not completely skew the balance of everything. Like I'm worried that they're going to have trouble balancing it, but I do like the idea of it. I do like the fact that it gives all of these tactical and customization options to teams when going into and prepping for a Stronghold match. I like it.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, dude, it's great. Always more things to work with is always better. I love it because I actually was kind of hoping that eventually it's never going to happen, but if they went back to the Guild Wars 1 system where you had just a shit ton of skills.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, it was broken as all hell, but if you had a set of skills, I could definitely find a set of skills that would counter your set of skills, you know, and they would just go back and forth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was ridiculous in that regard, but it was still fun because you had so much to work with in that regard. So that would be kind of interesting if they went back to that. How crazy would that be?
Oh man, yeah, I can't even comment on it because I played very little of Guild Wars 1, but yeah,
Did you do it like me, where you only did it for the Hall of Monuments? Be honest.
I did it because viewers wanted me to try Guild Wars 1, and I got to like level 5, I think. I've barely played any Guild Wars 1.
I was just curious because that's the reason why I did it, is because I knew Guild Wars 2 was coming out and I wanted the Hall of Monuments skins
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So that's the only reason why I did it.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a bad game. After downloading it and playing it, it was actually a fun game.
Oh yeah, like
But that was my original intention.
the stuff I've played. Yeah, Guild Wars 1 is fun. Like it's a lot more fun than I actually gave it credit for initially. Like it's a good game. It's just I haven't sunk much time into it. But yeah, that's all those skills, all the customization would be nuts.
Oh, dude, I really, 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 really hope they just keep adding more skills, adding more weapons. I think that's what a lot of people want is because, like, it's nice to get new areas and new bosses, but I think what people really, really want is new ways to fight the bosses, not just new bosses, right? Like, you want new skills to use on a boss, or new weapons to use on a boss. You don't just want a new boss because it's a new boss, right? You want new ways that you can fight them.
Yeah.
And I think that's what a lot of people want, because you could have a ton of new areas, a ton of new bosses, but you're stuck with the same skills. So I think that's what people really, really want.
Yeah, that's why people are really excited for those elite specs because they add all those options. All right. Well, I think we're approaching like the hour 20 mark. So
Nice.
Yeah, a little over, but I mean it's still shorter than what we've done in the past. But yeah, any final thoughts on anything you got there, Arkin, or?
No, just to recap on what I thought about the Revenant. It felt weak offensively, but when I fought against it, it didn't feel ridiculous in a sense that there was a lot of random procs, like a lot of traits are in the game or a lot of skills have. So I liked it in that regard, that it just wasn't random. Like if I had stacks of confusion on me, it wasn't random. It was because I was too slow to avoid the attack. So I like that about the Revenant. I love it. But is it too weak? Yeah, I think it's too weak, but maybe it's just because I'm just too used to the random applications of stuns, conditions, whatever the case is, or damage.
Yeah, I like how it plays, but it doesn't feel powerful enough, and it's missing many things, many pieces.
Many pieces.
Many pieces. But all right, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. This has been episode 18, talking about Revenants and a little bit of Stronghold stuff. I've been Shin. This has been Arkin.
Bye.
Hey. All right, thanks for listening, everyone. Catch you later.
Take care.